For folks out there who want more energy, shallow breathing is never going to get you there. By taking small, shallow breaths and unfiltered breaths, what ends up happening is we get bad quality air, and we don't get enough air, which means we don't have enough fuel for the fire and we don't have enough energy. So by keeping just this one habit, like this would be a better habit than listening to almost all of the sleep hygiene. If all you did was keep your wake up time consistent, notice I didn't say bedtime, but wake up time consistent, you could actually make a biological process in your body consistent that helps you fall asleep.
That's Dr. Michael Breus. With over 23 years of experience, he's been named the top sleep doctor of Los Angeles and is a frequent expert resource on TV and in major publications. He's also the author of multiple best-selling books, and today he's going to share some insights from his latest, Sleep, Drink, Breathe, Simple Daily Habits for Profound Long-Term Health. So you'll learn 1, the top habit that leads to better sleep. 2, just how much water your body needs. And 3, what most get wrong about breathing. And if you'd like to see a quick summary write-up of some of these insights, I recommend you sign up for the free Gold Nugget email newsletter at awesomeatyourjob.com. I'm Pete Vakaitis. This is How to Be Awesome at Your Job. And now, here's Dr. Michael Breus. Michael, welcome back.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here 8 years later.
Yes, indeed. It's been a while. You were one of the first and one of the longest episodes because I had so much I wanted to talk to you about sleep. So thank you for bringing it.
Of course.
I'd love to hear any really fascinating new discoveries that you've made in the world of wellness, energy, sleep, drinking, and breathing that you're excited about to share right off the top.
Well, I've got a new book coming out and I'm pretty excited about it. But let me tell you why I wrote the book, because I think that's really the most important part is I just think wellness is too freaking complicated. Like I was at the gym the other day and this woman, she kind of finished an exercise and then she was just like sitting there. Like you could tell she was visibly confused at what was the next thing she was supposed to do. And I feel like all of wellness has sort of started to turn into that. Everybody's asking me, should I buy a sauna? What green drink should I have? And they're not even looking at, are they getting enough sleep? Do you have enough water in your body? Do you know how to breathe correctly? So I started thinking about it after I read a book my friend Joe Polish wrote called Life Gives to the Giver. And he was talking about these skills that you gain over time and that one skill, sometimes a particular skill will, once you have it, will kind of topple over and then maybe make some other skills a little bit easier. They called them dominoes. So I was like, well, I wonder what the dominoes of wellness are. What are the fundamentals? Like, what is the DNA of wellness? What are the 2 or 3 things that you just got to get right for everything else to make sense? And sleeping, hydrating, and breathing kind of made sense to me. If you look at the world's records, the longest a person has ever gone without sleep is about 11 and a half days. Started hallucinating. It was pretty messed up. Wasn't pretty. Pretty much kind of in a corner, sort of shaking to the side. But you look at how somebody can last without water, which, by the way, I do not recommend to anyone. 3 days is about as far as you're really going to get. And then when you look at breathing, how long are you going to last without breathing? Without assistance, I think that the record is something like 11 and a half minutes, 12 minutes underwater, something like that. But I started to think about like, what are the fundamental things that our body can only live without for a very short period of time? Believe it or not, we can go without food for like 30 days. We can go without exercise for a lifetime. I think a lot of people have proven that one. You can go a long time without doing a lot of stuff. And so then I said to myself, okay, these 3 feel like it. Let's dive into the literature and see what there is to see. Obviously, I know the sleep literature pretty well, but this book is not a repeat of that. What I really decided to do more of was look at, okay, well, what are the 5 big mistakes? Like, what are the 5 things that people are just screwing up with their sleep that if they just fixed 1 or 2 of them, I swear to you, life would be so much easier. Then I started to really dive into hydration. And to be fair, I was never like a hydration guy until I started to become a runner and live in Arizona at the same time. So I really had to know and understand that from a runner's perspective, but also started to really wanted to learn about hydration from an overall perspective. I'm 56 years old now. A lot of my contemporaries are finding that hydration is a bit of a challenge. And so really understanding what are my hydration needs and then breathing And then you start to think about breathing like, all right, come on, Michael, like how bad could I be breathing? I mean, I'm alive, right? Like this really shouldn't be that difficult. If you start to look at the Indian and the Ayurvedic culture and history, you start to learn that some of the yogis and some of the people way back in the day, they've been doing some pretty interesting breathing techniques for a very long period of time, and they get incredible results. There's breathing that slows you down, makes you sleep, turns on your parasympathetic nervous system. There's breathing that hypes you up and turns on your sympathetic nervous system. And we use these techniques today. If you go from standstill to running across a field, trust me, you're using some breathing techniques hopefully fairly efficiently and fairly quickly. So I started to say, all right, can I make it easy? Can I make it straightforward? So what I did was I said, look, I'm going to set my alarm 5 times a day. And I did this for myself just to kind of test it out. And I chose the times based on my chronotype. And then during each one of those 5 little 5-minute periods of time, I have a water, I do a breathing technique, I'm focusing on something for my sleep. And honestly, like it's now become ingrained as a habit and it's wonderful. Most of my patients tell me this is a great starting line for wellness. And I think that's really what's great about it is you don't have to worry about, do I have an exercise routine? How much protein should I have? Do I need creatine? It's more like, hey, dude, just breathe and sleep and hydrate. And guess what? You're like 50% there.
Well, fascinating stuff. And I'm curious, you mentioned your patients. Do you have a tale of transformation in terms of a professional was like, yeah, okay, sure. Sleeping, hydrating, breathing, got it. And then they did it. And what kinds of results can unfold for people who think they're doing it fine, but then put some attention on it and to do it masterfully?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the devil's in the details for sure when it comes to people and how they follow it and how they adapt it. I found some really cool adaptations for people. As we get older, we start to lose touch with some of our thirst signals. We don't realize that we're thirsty. And so I had one woman who really, she just forgot to drink all the time. And so what we did was we paired television. She liked to watch her shows at night with tea. And so not caffeinated tea, obviously, because that would be bad for her sleep, but we used to call it tea and TV. And so we would actually just put on her phone a reminder, tea and TV. And it was something that was that simple for her that allowed her to become hydrated. And then, to be honest with you, she started to become more motivated for her weight loss goals. Now, I'm not saying that this is some miraculous recovery, and I'm not saying that she lost, 50 pounds because she started doing tea and TV. But what I am saying is that something as simple as hydration can kickstart other behaviors that you're just not motivated to do. It's very, very, very hard to be motivated when you're tired, when you're dehydrated, and when you're out of breath, right?
Mm-hmm.
That it just doesn't work well. Now, as far as like looking at some pretty drastic people, I belong to a men's group, and on every Sunday we go for a hike, which is awesome. We have a great time, and it's beautiful here in California. There's a million places to go hiking. And we have a varied age range in our men's group. We have guys that are probably in their late 20s all the way on up to their 80s. And so for the older guys, we always make sure that we've got people in the front of the line, people in the back of the line, a little extra water, things like that, just to be, thoughtful. And this one guy comes on the trip and he's a fairly robust guy. And he's like, oh, I'm a camel. I don't need to drink water. And we're like, bro, you need water. And we kept trying to give him water. 3/4 of the way up the trail, he totally bonks. We have to call EMS. It's a mess. So, those are the situations that you obviously want to avoid. Now, the good news is for that particular individual, he came back to do hikes a few weeks later, and we had absolutely no problems with him because he was able to stay hydrated. So I think there are some pretty cool stories out there about people who are definitely finding something new about themselves from this. But I think it's one of those things that you didn't think about. So I have had a couple of patients turn to me and say things like, I'm not as grouchy all of a sudden, which is kind of fascinating, not something that you would have expected. I had one spouse tell me that they were much more interested in being intimate with their partner because that partner just seemed like a different person. Their mood had changed, their ability to communicate was better, all of these different things. Now, I'd like to blame it on the Sleep, Drink, Breathe program that it was going to be fixing all of your marital woes, but I'm not convinced it will. I will tell you, though, if you do it with your partner, it's a fun thing to do together. And it's something that a couple can do to get healthy together.
Okay. Well, that sounds very pleasurable. Thank you. Good doctor. Well, so let's talk about these in sequence. When it comes to sleep, I'm curious, how big a deal is it if we get okay sleep, maybe 6.25-ish hours a night versus great sleep, 7.5 plus hours a night? Is that fine, or is that pretty consequential a difference?
So here's what I'll tell you is it only matters when it matters. So as an example, if you're getting 6.25 hours and then all of a sudden you get 5, you are screwed. But if you're getting 7 and then you get 5, you can snap back from that very easily and be pretty good that day as well as the next. So it really has to do with compliance and consistency, I think, is the two biggest things with sleep. Because if you can just build a steady, solid base of good quality sleep, and it doesn't have to be, again, we're talking about minutes here. I'm talking about quality, right? So I don't care if you have 6 hours of sleep as long as it's super high quality, if that's what works for you. But remember, the deal here is not to get the least amount of the good stuff, right? People seem to think it's this kind of game. Like, remember, sleep is recovery. This is what your body needs to do in order for you to get to your next step. So by ripping it off, by limiting it, whether it's through time or caffeine, is kind of foolish when you start to think about it, because you're going to need that body to repeat that activity again and again and again.
Now, when you say screwed, what exactly does that mean in practice?
Well, so for example, it really can depend. I have some people who, as an example, let's say you're normally getting 7 hours of sleep and something terrible happens and your flight is delayed and you're sleeping on the floor of the airport and you get 5 hours and then you have to go on television the next day. You're probably going to be just fine, right? Because you're not feeling so great, but you've been getting 7 hours of sleep. If you've been getting 6 hours of sleep and that's really not what your body needs 7, your anxiety is going to increase significantly with this new added stress of not having slept well, on top of now being in a stressful situation. My guess is that usually at that point in time, a lot of people reach for stimulants in order to kind of counteract that level of sleepiness. And so once you start to go down that path, you end up overstimulating because your body is unfortunately dehydrated because it hasn't slept. And now you're kind of in this little bit of a death spiral where you're amping up your anxiety while you're amping up your caffeine. Usually the performance is probably a B minus of what you would want it to have been had you been sleeping probably 7 hours, where it could have easily been a B plus or an A minus, again, just from a rebound.
Yeah. And what I found is the consequence can be even greater insofar as when I'm well rested, and tell me if there's some cool science on this, so it's not just my anecdote. When I'm well rested, I'm ready to take on the important but not urgent and not pleasant tasks that have tremendous strategic value.
Absolutely.
And when I'm kind of sleep deprived, like, I don't feel like it. I'll maybe do that later. And so in a way, like, if good sleep makes the difference between doing those things and not over the course of a career, it could have a multi-million-dollar impact.
Absolutely. And I think we see that with hydration and with breathing as well. So, I 100% agree that if you can have your body kind of in a flow state, in a mindset where it might not be perfect, it might not be, I'm getting my best ideas every single second, but it might be, hey, I'm going to do the blocking and tackling that needs to be done of, trimming this email list or creating better copy or doing more editing or whatever it is. Absolutely. I think sleep, hydration, and breathing, all of which, again, if you can put it on kind of a schedule, it makes it so much easier. It's interesting when you look at entrepreneurs in particular, and you look at people who are like, grow, I got to get my business going. Some of them have some of the worst wellness habits you've ever seen. They're all coffee junkies or energy drink. I shouldn't say all. There's a lot. And, that ends up playing a big role when, in fact, if you slept well and you were hydrated, you'd be shocked at how much energy you have, right? So I think there's some things in there that I think could be super duper valuable at any stage of business.
It's funny, Michael, I don't know how many podcasters you chat with who have, in fact, read dozens of full text studies, randomized controlled trials of different sleep interventions. But I have, because I'm a fiend for this sort of thing. And what I find interesting or sad, I don't know, is that often sleep hygiene education is used as the control and sees almost no result as compared to the active intervention. So how do you, in the position of educating, help make an impact here? Like, what do we need to do if sleep hygiene education is so lame? It's the control.
Yeah, so number one, I love the fact that you brought this up, and it's important that you're thinking about it this way as well. So number one, let's be super duper clear for your audience members. Sleep hygiene just by itself, in and of itself, it barely does. Let's be fair. Now, if you do the opposite of sleep hygiene, like if you have a drum set in your bedroom, of course, it's not going to go well. Super hot room, right? Lights all on, right? Like, I get it. Okay. That seems like it's kind of like the no duh of sleep is sleep hygiene to me. But I think there's something in between, like a sleep disorder and I guess what you'd call disordered sleep, right? Which is just sort of, I wish I had some guidelines. I wish I had some evidence. I wish I had a few things that would really work that I could follow that were straightforward and simple to be able to allow me to get better sleep. So one of them is, no matter what your chronotype is if everybody out there just wakes up at the same time 7 days a week, not 5 days a week, 7 days a week, biologically speaking, you set a process in motion so that your melatonin production becomes consistent at a very specific time every single night. It is roughly 14 hours, I shouldn't say exactly, roughly 14 hours after you wake up. So if you wake up at 6 a.m., 14 hours later is 8 p.m., and that's when your melatonin is going to go on board and start to work. That's why people start to feel sleepy around 9:30, 10 o'clock. However, if you wake up at 6 a.m. during the week and 9 o'clock on the weekends, 3 hours later, melatonin production is 3 hours later, which means your brain doesn't even going to think about going to bed until 1 o'clock in the morning. So by keeping just this one habit, like this would be a better habit than listening to almost all of the sleep hygiene. Again, don't sleep with drum set in your room with lights on in a very hot room. But if all you did was keep your wake up time consistent, notice I didn't say bedtime, but wake up time consistent, you could actually make a biological process in your body consistent that helps you fall asleep.
I love it. So number one, that's your top.
That's my top. That will affect, and it doesn't matter what your chronotype is. Now, I've mentioned the word a couple of times, and I know, Pete, you know what chronotype is, but for your audience members, I created a system called chronotyping, where you can take a quiz. You go to chronoquiz.com, and it'll teach you what type of sleeper that you are. So there are 4 different types. There's early birds are now called lions. Night owls are now called wolves. And we figured this out. Now, what's even better is waking up at the right time based on your chronotype. So chronotype turns out to be genetic, and it's something that I can show you. It's a quiz. It's like 30 questions online. Like, it's not very long, and it's fairly accurate. We've had over 4 million people take the quiz now. And so we've really been able to kind of dive deep and get some interesting data out there. And it's quite fascinating to learn about these different chronotypes because it tells you a lot about the person's personality and things like that. So not only waking up at the same time, but if you wake up based on your chronotypical wake up time, it's even better. In truth, you end up needing less sleep.
Okay, that's beautiful. And what's interesting is between the last time we spoke and now, I spent a night in the Vanderbilt Sleep Laboratory, hooked up to a whole lot of things.
Nice. Tell me.
And they informed me, much to my surprise, and being a normal weight, that I had a mild case of obstructive sleep apnea.
Oh, what were your numbers? Do you remember?
Well, thank you for asking. My apnea-hypopnea index was 9.1.
That's not very much.
So it is mild, but I was experiencing sleepiness in the day, and I've been doing some things, and that has helped. So, but as I've learned, the sleep apnea business is apparently pretty widespread.
Oh, it's amazing how many people have sleep apnea that it's undiagnosed. Now, here's the thing, is you have to really understand sleep apnea and its consequences to really gain an appreciation for it. So first of all, mild sleep apnea in somebody who's fairly lean like you are is something that in most cases we may or may not decide to treat. Okay. But as an example, for somebody who may have been a bit bigger, then we might have said to ourselves, they're already putting a load on their heart because they're a little bit bigger. So cardiovascularly, that could in the future be problematic. We want to make sure, even with mild sleep apnea, that isn't putting an extra load on the heart. So therefore, even somebody with the exact same numbers as you, let's say 9, but let's say had an additional 60 pounds on them, we would probably consider treating it at that point. Also, to be fair, their symptomatology would probably be much worse than yours. You just said anything that you reported was kind of mild, whereas somebody with 60 pounds on them at your height would probably have significant different symptomatology, I would gather probably more severe. So it's interesting when you start to look at it. For folks out there who want to know a little bit more about what we're talking about, an apnea-hypopnea index means the number of times that you stop breathing or almost stop breathing divided by the amount of time that you spend in bed per hour. So Pete stopped breathing in his sleep, or almost stopped, according to the numbers he reports, as roughly 9 times an hour. Now, you might say to yourself, holy crap, 9 times an hour, that's once every 6 minutes. That seems like a lot, Michael. So let me give you the scale. So it's 5 to 15 is mild, 15 to 30 is moderate, 30 and above is severe. Also, one thing that we don't know about Pete as of yet is how low did his oxygen desaturate while having these events. That can also be a severity criteria as well. If I have somebody who stops breathing in their sleep 9 times an hour, but their oxygen dumps into the 80s, I'm treating that immediately because I'm concerned that they may have other things that could be going on.
Yes. Thank you for asking. About 92-ish is...
So that's fantastic. Yeah. So we never want to see it going below 92, if at all possible. 90 is kind of like that lower rung where it's like, okay, let's just make sure it's above 90 and then you're okay. But 92 is actually a better number to have. And on room air during the daytime, you're probably 96, 98.
So, well, all that's to say, so we're getting into it, but I think it's important. So if folks have no idea that they might have sleep apnea, what would be some telltale signs? And I'm gonna say it, Oura Ring let me down on this one. Other people may love their Oura Rings, and I think it's great for other purposes, but it left me in the dark.
Well, it's not diagnostic. Yeah, it's not diagnostic for sleep apnea, number one. So first of all, if we're thinking trackers, everybody probably knows that Apple Watch just came out and is now actually tracking for sleep apnea. So they actually will tell you, supposedly, if you've got sleep apnea. I don't have the app as of yet, so I haven't tried it out. So if you're looking for trackers, that's one that might be possibly helpful to do so. But to be fair, usually your bed partner will tell you. The person sitting next to you is going to tell you if you're snoring. They're going to tell you if you stop breathing in your sleep. You may actually experience it as well. You could wake up and be like, and gasping or choking from air and trying to do that. So that could be a telltale sign. If you wake up in the morning with a headache, that is absolutely a sign. It usually is due to oxygen deprivation, causing that kind of swelling in the brain, which is not good. Also, depression, anxiety, moodiness, things of that nature, that up and down nature of it all, that can certainly be a symptom or a sign of sleep apnea. And then, of course, daytime sleepiness. So just being tired, falling asleep at work, not performing, things like that.
Okay. So if folks are thinking, that sounds like me, I'll say one of the easiest things I've discovered to assess this is just like the Snore Lab app, get audio of yourself. Like, hey, there's me stopping breathing. Whoa. Okay. And 2, you could just get like sleeplay.com has a overnight test.
Yeah, we sell them actually from a sleep doctor as well. We have a full line of tests. So it's literally you push on a button and we do a full telecommunication with one of our doctors. So you actually meet with one of our doctors, talk about your symptomatology. They decide if it's appropriate, send a test to your house. Believe it or not, the tests now are disposable.
Yeah, I thought that was weird. But I'll tell you, my results from the test were almost identical to my results from the Vanderbilt Sleep Lab, and so much cheaper.
Right. And easier, right?
Yeah.
And in a better environment, I would argue an environment more tailored to what your natural sleep would look like, right?
Yeah. Very good. Okay, so there you have it. You might have sleep apnea, you don't know it. Take a look at that. The dividends could be huge. Wake up at the same time. What else would be maybe your number 2 hottest tip for improved sleep?
I'll be honest with you. I think it's kind of the not tip. It's the don't think that it's just going to go away on its own, because it's not. Everybody thinks that, I'm just stressed out and I'm supposed to sleep like crap right now. Or I've got 3 kids, I'm supposed to sleep like crap. And that's actually not the case. So it's not going to go away on its own. If you are not happy with either the quality or the quantity of your sleep, and by the way, don't confuse the two. Don't think that just because you sleep more, it's going to be better, because it might not. right? So understand how things like caffeine, alcohol affect your sleep. Possibly follow my 3-2-1 rule, which is 3 hours before bed, stop alcohol, 2 hours before bed, stop food, 1 hour before bed, stop fluids. That will save you some trips to the bathroom and hopefully make you have some better sleep.
Very good. Well, now let's talk hydration. Good doctor, as you said that we can lose touch with our thirst signals as we age, but if we're, in the prime of our careers, can't we just drink when we're thirsty and call it good?
I wish it worked. Unfortunately, as I take a sip, it doesn't. So what happens in a lot of cases is if we are sleep deprived, and I think we've pretty much established that we are a sleep deprived society, the signals don't come as often as they should. So believe it or not, our thirst meter, if you will, is off if you're sleep deprived. So that's number one. But let's say you're well slept and your thirst meter should be on the mark. Part of the problem is that we don't have a solid understanding of what that amount should be. I started diving into the literature because honestly, it was kind of foreboding. And I've seen everywhere from 50 ounces a day to 130 ounces a day recommended.
Get 2.5x.
I know, right? So the problem is that nobody knows what they're shooting for. So I actually developed a formula based on your weight and what's called your uptick. So your ability to absorb water and then how much you would actually need in order to do that based on your weight. It's quite simple. So you just take your weight, you multiply it by 0.6, okay? And that's the number of ounces that you should drink. Now, if
my weight in pounds and not kilograms.
That is correct.
All right.
Pounds. And so if you're a 100-pound person, you should have 60 ounces of water. If you're a 200-pound person, you should have 120 ounces of water. Right? Now, you want to add 12 ounces for every half hour of exercise. That's it. That's the whole formula. Weight times 0.6, and then take that number and add 12 ounces for every half hour of exercise. And that will get you pretty much right as rain. The key here is to sip, not chug it. And you want to get at least 40 ounces before noon, because otherwise it's tough to get all that water down without having to pee all night long.
Okay, that's very clear and direct. Thank you. All right.
I like to prescribe water. I think it's the best supplement out there.
Okay, now water, is it always water? Other beverages are just as fine or not as good, or what's your take?
Well, you know what? That's a great question. So number one, there's a lot of types of water, believe it or not. And there are water enhancers, by the way. We can talk about that. But I think you can throw a couple of cups of coffee in there. I don't have a problem with that. I would prefer if you could stay away from the sugary stuff. So if you like sparkling water, that's great. If you like carbonated water, I don't have a problem with it. I'd stay away from soda if you possibly can. But I'm also here to tell you that if you're not going to drink and the only thing that's going to get you to drink is a Diet Coke, fine, drink your Diet Coke. I'd rather you get the fluid than not. Okay.
Well, so then let's talk about these enhancers, these electrolytes, the powders, etc. Are they handy? Under what context?
Yep. So that's exactly how you should think of them, as handy and only under certain contexts. So I did a little comparison in the book looking at things like liquid IV and LMNT and a few others. And here's what I can tell you. First of all, there's a lot of sodium in these. And there's nothing wrong with that. But here's the thing. What they're trying to do is create a barrier with the water-salt balance in your body. Because when you get too salty, your body wants more water. When you have too much water, your body wants more salt. So that's basically kind of how the whole thing works. These packets of electrolytes are mostly salt. So you want to be careful, especially if you have high blood pressure, about dumping these things into your water bottle every day. Why I said I like the word handy is because you should have a packet with you, but you should use them sparingly. So I would say, as an example, if you're a runner and you run 5 miles every day and you do a long run on the weekends, then I would use it for the long run on the weekends. So times where you're going to be extra exposed or have a significant more energy expenditure, I think it makes a lot of sense because that helps keep that hydration going. But I want to be also clear about something, is using one of these products does not preclude you from drinking more water. So what a lot of people will do is they'll pour this thing in and they'll think, oh, I don't need to have my however many ounces because I've put my hydration multiplier in. No, 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 no. You still need the same amount of water. You just need to really think about these times and when to use it. And I would argue you probably already know when those are.
Okay. And then I'm thinking, if I'm consuming this much fluid, for some, that could be quite the uptick. Am I going to have to go to the bathroom all the time, or are there some strategies for this? What do I do?
It turns out that you don't have to go to the bathroom all the time. So it's kind of interesting. There's a section in my book that looks at bladder control, actually. And here's what's fascinating is as you learn to drink more water, your bladder and your body absorbs it quite nicely and can control it. So you won't see a huge uptick in bathroom breaks. You will for the first 2 weeks. But by the third week, it levels itself out quite nicely, and it's not really any more than usually what you're used to. Here's an interesting little factoid, is that no living mammal can pee for longer than 21 seconds.
Now I want to try it. I don't think I've timed it before.
Well, you will never not time it now. Everyone who is listening, I can assure you, is now the next time you pee, you're going to think about it. But if you pee for 21 seconds, you have truly emptied your bladder.
Okay. Well, we'll
challenge out there.
Well, the stopwatch is coming out. Well, that seems kind of short intuitively, but I mean, I don't know. Well, I mean, we'll see.
Wait till the next time you pee. And it's not a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay. And so then is there a certain amount of fluid that I can only, you said don't gulp or guzzle, like, is it like 16 fluid ounces an hour, or is there a guideline for like what's going to be just more than your body can deal with?
So here's what I tell people is you want to think of your body like a sponge. So, when you walk out in the morning to the sink and there's this kind of shriveled block and it's pretty hard, you could probably hammer something with it. That's your sponge, right? That's your body when you first have water. And if you pull the spout and you put water on it, if you put a lot of water on it, it just rolls off. It doesn't really get absorbed, right? But if you have a slow stream, it slowly gets absorbed. And then the whole thing grows. And then finally, when it gets too much water, it basically overruns. That's exactly how you should think about drinking, right? You're the sponge. You don't want to throw 20 ounces down your gullet because it's not going to get absorbed. But if you sip it, you'll be surprised. So my favorite technique for doing this is every morning, one of my morning routines is I call it the 3:15s, where I sit on the edge of the bed and I take 15 deep breaths. Then I get 15 minutes of sunshine and I drink 15 ounces of water. So while I'm getting my 15 minutes of sunshine, every minute I just take a gulp. And I'm outside, I get the sunlight, I get the vitamin D, it turns off my melatonin, and I'm breathing. Like it's like I don't know how many that is. It's past a quadruple.
Okay. All at once. All right. Well, any other do's and don'ts when it comes to hydration?
One thing for people to know, and this is kind of weird, but it's actually a truism. You can actually drink too much water. And this can happen. It's happened actually at fraternity hazing and things of that nature. You can actually make somebody toxic by putting too much water into them or into your body. As a matter of fact, was it Brooke Shields actually had this happen? She was overhydrating, and she overhydrated so much that she actually went unconscious and passed out. So you can go to the other side of water. So again, balance is sort of key here.
Okay. Well, let's talk about breathing.
Yeah, let's talk about it. It's amazing how many people don't know how to breathe. It's actually quite remarkable.
So what are we doing wrong exactly?
That's the right question, right? It's like, well, Michael, are we doing something wrong? I mean, we're alive, right? So how wrong could it be? I would say some of the biggest things that we see people that are doing that are actually just not helping with their breathing. Number one is their breathing is too shallow, right? So number one, that puts much bigger load on the heart. Number two, you actually get about half as much air. Taking a long, deep belly breath and then kind of letting it go through your diaphragm actually extends the lungs and allows your heart to slow down, which is much more healthy, generally speaking. So one of the things that we do is we breathe in a too shallow of a way. So it's just very light, repetitive breaths. The other biggie that we do is we're too mouthy. Too many people are mouth breathers. That can be due to congestion. That can be due to people just not really thinking about it. But in a majority of cases, when people are mouth breathing, it's basically like putting leaded gas into the engine, right? Because you get every bacteria, virus, particulate, everything is coming right through the mouth, straight into the lungs and kind of gumming up the works. I think the other big one, and there's actually 6 breathing problems, but I think these are the big 3. People forget to breathe. Do you ever do this, Pete? I have this happen to me every once in a while. Like if I'm concentrating, Like if I'm playing a video game or I'm watching something, I'm just there. And then all of a sudden I realize I'm like, I forgot to breathe. I start to breathe again. Do you ever do that?
I'm sure.
So that's something that people do as well. And again, getting people more thoughtful about breathing in general turns out to be a great idea. And, the yogis and the Ayurvedics and that culture has done such an amazing job of teaching us so many different kinds of breathing. I utilize several of these different types of breath work in the book, and it's fun. It's fun to actually try some different things out. I've tried the hyperventilation breathing called Kundalini breathing. That was quite an experience for me. I've also tried the 4-7-8 breathing. This is a technique that I utilize actually in the middle of the night for many of my patients. So people who wake up in the middle of the night can't return back to sleep. My favorite technique then is 4-7-8 breathing. So it's exactly what it sounds like. Slowly breathe in for a count of 4. You hold for a count of 7. You breathe out for a count of 8. This was a technique that was developed by Dr. Andrew Weil for the Navy SEALs to help them lower their heart rate so they could shoot in between heart rates for long-range snipers. So this is a great technique. You can utilize. I utilize it before I go on stage. I utilize it in the middle of the night. It's one of those great things that will just dump your heart rate super duper quick and allow you to breathe better. So I think there's a lot out there. There's more out there than you might imagine on breathing in general.
Okay. And so if we're breathing through the mouth, we have some negative impact associated with just sucking in the
You bet.
microbes, pathogens, etc. I guess I'm curious, like what's really at stake when we breathe optimally versus we breathe just kind of without any thought to it?
Oxygen transport. And so it all has to do with energy. So for folks out there who want more energy, shallow breathing is never going to get you there unless it's super duper forceful. So I would argue that all of your energy, remember, oxygen is the fuel that lights the sugar fire that is your energy. So when we eat something, it all gets broken down into glucose and then stored as either fat or glucose. And so we need something to light that on fire to create energy. That something is oxygen. And so by taking small, shallow breaths and unfiltered breaths, what ends up happening is we get bad quality air and we don't get enough air, which means we don't have enough fuel for the fire and we don't have enough energy.
Mm-hmm. Okay, understood. And then when you've got a few changes you recommend, so we've already covered the using your nose and bring it into the diaphragm. Any other top things we're getting wrong?
Well, I think just being thoughtful about breathing and thinking about it is probably one of the biggest ththings that I want you to do. And let's be fair, you don't have to do something crazy. Okay. Like a lot of people turn to me like, oh, Michael, you learned all these crazy breathing techniques. I'm not a meditator. I'm not a yoga person. I don't know how to do those things. Wrong. Okay. This is just breathing we're talking about. One of the techniques is you hold one nostril closed and you breathe in through one nostril and then you breathe out through another nostril. That's the technique. Like this isn't hard stuff, but what it does is it allows you to be purposeful in your breath work. It allows your heart rate to go up and down in ways, shapes, and forms that causes other things to happen in your body, like melatonin to be produced or cortisol to be produced or things like that. So it's really quite powerful. I was kind of surprised because when I went into this, I'm like, what am I going to learn about breathing? I was shocked.
Well, one of your suggestions is to strengthen your diaphragm. And I'd love to get your hot take on, I guess they call it respiratory muscular training, RMT, with tools like the breather. But do you think that's worth doing?
So here's what I think. I don't think it's worth spending a ton of money on a bunch of fancy gadgets and gizmos. There's actually some things that you can buy on Amazon for $20 that can actually help strengthen your breathing quite nicely. But the big thing to do is, again, in the Sleep, Drink, Breathe programmatic book, where we have these 5 separate times throughout the day where we have you do different things, you're breathing at all 5 of those times, you will naturally begin to strengthen just by doing some deep diaphragmatic breathing, even if that's the only technique that you do. So the good news here is, I think if all you did was buy the book and follow the program, your diaphragm's going to get stronger.
Okay. Well, Michael, tell me anything else you want to make sure to mention before we hear about your favorite things.
Well, here's the deal, is I feel like the book is a little bit like a ticket. So if you buy the book, you actually send me a copy of the receipt. And I then send you all this cool stuff. So I actually have got several lectures that I'm doing live that you'll be invited to join. You get the plan immediately for free right there. So even before the book comes out, there's a couple of different things in there that I think you'll like. Also, you are entered into a drawing for a free mattress. So we're going to have several mattresses that we're going to give away for people who are doing that. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We're definitely looking forward to it. So if you get a chance, go to sleepdoctor.com/book and check it out.
Big thanks to Michael for sharing his wisdom with us. And big thanks to our sponsors. Check them out.
One sponsor to check out is Jenny Kane Home. I am in love with my super cozy Jenny Kane cashmere hoodie, and dare say I believe it is the coziest item that I own, bar none. And Jenny Kane Home brings those same delightful touches to home decor. It has been called the ultimate destination for elevated home essentials. Their designs are so intentional, their quality so high, everything there looks custom, and yet it arrives in your home so much faster than custom pieces do. They've got amazing pillows, throws, glass candles, dinnerware, and a strong rewards program that you can join completely free. Jenny Kane Home has everything you need to transform your space into a luxurious sanctuary. And How to Be Awesome at Your Job listeners get 15% off your first order when you use the code AWESOME15 at checkout. That's 15% off your first order at JENNIKAYNE, JennyKane.com, promo code AWESOME15. Curate your dream home with Jenny Kane.
All right. Well, now could you share a favorite quote, something you find inspiring?
So I heard Nelson Mandela once say, "I never lose, I only win or learn."
Okay. And a favorite study or experiment or bit of research?
I think for me, the most interesting research that came out was when they started studying narcolepsy to help insomniacs. So they started to learn, genetically speaking, what was going on with narcoleptics and make them feel so sleepy to try to understand how we could help people with insomnia. I thought that was a really cool application of the science.
Well, that is cool. Now I have to know, is there one weird trick from narcoleptics to snap into sleep immediately?
Well, so it opened up a whole line of genetic work and possible new drug therapy, actually. So there are actually several companies now that are looking at the on switch for narcolepsy as a potential on switch for people with insomnia, but not at that level, of course. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens next.
Okay. And a favorite book?
Well, my all-time favorite book is Where the Sidewalk Ends by Shel Silverstein. It's a children's poetry book. I don't know if people out there have known it. That's been an important book for me. But I just read Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, and that was just powerful. I just finished it maybe 5-6 weeks ago, and it's one of those books that it just makes you think.
All right. And a favorite tool, something you used to be awesome at your job?
Probably my pillow, because I'm a sleep doctor. I love my pillow. I actually have several pillows that I utilize. One is from a company called Infinite Moon. I have no affiliate anything with these companies. Infinite Moon, they make a cool, really good pillow called the Curve, and then something called Sleep Crown. Now, this is weird. This is a pillow that I actually put over my head, and it actually helps. I don't know why. It's just so damn comfortable, and I really enjoy it.
And is there a key nugget you share that really seems to connect and resonate with folks? You hear them quote it back to you often?
Sleep is a lot like love. The less you look for it, the more it shows up.
Okay. And if folks want to learn more, get in touch, where'd you point them?
Head on over to sleepdoctor.com. Check out my book. You're welcome to ping me on Facebook, TikTok, all of those. And I have a YouTube channel where I'm now doing some really fun, interesting videos. So if you get a chance, check it out there. Throw me some comments.
All right. And do you have a final challenge or call to action for folks looking to be awesome at their jobs?
Here's my final call to action is do yourself a favor and just consider your sleep, your hydration, and your breathing and what it could do for your overall performance, whether that's your work performance, your relationship performance, or your personal performance, and see if it's something that might be interesting for you. You might be surprised.
All right. Michael, it's been fun once again. Good luck and good sleep.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Wishing you some sweet dreams, Pete.
I love it when a dude who has spent so much time researching a subject, in the case of Dr. Michael Breus and sleep, says, here's the number one top thing you can do. Wake up at the same time every day. And then reinforce that with some light. And I've been doing that and I have seen some improvements. And I'll tell you what, I have spent a ton of time researching sleep things. So it's really nice to have it cut to the heart with that top tip. And also say the sleep apnea business is no joke. I do recommend, if you even suspect, I wake up and I still feel kind of sleepy. I've been told that I snore. Definitely take a look at that. And it's funny, I found that prior to addressing this, few of the sleep interventions I've done have done anything. So that's been super helpful. Doing some exercise, including breathing exercises with that breather device that's linked to the show notes, has really made a real measurable difference that I can see on the mild sleep apnea front. And then the other stuff like consistently waking up and getting that light takes it to the next level. So my sleep has been improved. And I tell you what, when I sleep well, it's like I'm on a straight up limitless pill, making good stuff happen. If you'd like to check out the show notes, the transcript, or the links to ads that we've referenced, please visit us at awesomeatyourjob.com/EP1005. Hope to catch you next time, and peace.